of you guys. There we go. All right, thank everybody for being here. Help me welcome our guest. We have Dr. Kenny Lee, our Superintendent of Schools here at Mahomet Seymour. Thank you for being here, Dr. Lee.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And help me welcome Dr. Lindsay Hall, our former superintendent and principal here in the Mahomet Seymour School District. Thank you guys and gals for being here today. And thank you all for, yeah, that's right, absolutely. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Mike Cunningham. I serve you as a Board of Trustees member here for the library. So I'm a library trustee here for past a year and a half or so. I also serve the Champaign County as a certified election judge as well. So this obviously has a lot of interest and passion for me here at the library and as an election judge as well. Tonight we're going to be talking about the referendum for the Mahomet Seymour School District. It's obviously a very hot topic that has been discussed in many corners of the community, and so therefore the library we've organized this evening to allow Mahomet residents to have the opportunity to ask questions directly from those who would be the best qualified to answer those questions. The Mahomet Public Library, we do not officially support nor oppose the referendum. We've asked our presenters, and we're going to ask our audience members here as well, that we do not tell anyone how to vote. You guys are here to help answer questions about the plans, the referendum, and even the history of the school district. And our hope at the library is that you get the information you need to make an informed decision. A couple of ground rules before we get started here. As your facilitator, I'll call on people with a goal, given as many people as possible. I think we should be okay if everybody has one or maybe two. I think we're okay here tonight with our time. To ask your questions, one follow-up question is included in your turn. A small amount of commentary may be included with your question, but we do ask that people not give speeches, and definitely we're not here to tell others how they should vote. We're trying, and we are going to keep the evening informative and constructive. Pretty simple ground rules, right? So I'd like to invite Dr. Lee, who's going to give a presentation on the referendum. Hopefully that sparks questions from the crowd. I have a few questions as well if we kind of get into a little bit of a lull to help spark some more questions. And we'll go until 8 o'clock or until we're satisfied here. Dr. Lee.
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening. It's my pleasure to be here, and my pleasure to serve as the superintendent at Mahomet Seymour School. So just excited to be here with you this evening. What I wanted to start off is talking a little bit about how we got where we're at tonight. So in the spring of 2023, our very supportive Board of Education had just reorganized, and we brought to them a strategic planning proposal that we didn't have a strategic plan in place at the time, and wanted to work through the process to really get a roadmap for us as a district for the next 3 to 5 years. Prior to our first meeting even happening with our facilitator for strategic planning, our Board of Education wanted to get out into the community, and they wanted to listen to what our constituents had to say about our school district regarding a myriad of different topics. Certainly facilities was one of those, but it really ran the gamut, and our board made sure that we had the opportunity to listen here in town a couple of times, virtually in Seymour. Just really spent that late spring and summer making sure that anybody who wanted to have their voice heard in person had the opportunity to do so. Once we got school in session last year, we sent out a call to everybody in the community that we could get a hold of, just seeking volunteers for our strategic planning team. We had 40 stakeholders involved in our strategic planning team. That involves students, parents, residents who don't have students in the district, fellow administrators and staff members, and retired teachers as well. So we went through that process. That was chosen. We met with our EDLS, which is Educational Leadership Solutions facilitators, and we created a strategic plan that was approved by our Board of Education in November of last fall. The strategic plan that our stakeholders came up with, our mission is we're committed to excellence for all Bulldogs to achieve, learn, and lead. And our vision is that we are all Bulldogs preparing courageous learners to achieve their aspirations through collaboration, innovation, and exploration. Our strategic plan is centered around these goals: academics and achievement, communication, facilities, finance, safety, and technology. The next step that we asked our Board of Education to do was that we engage our facilitator in a process to ensure that the district is implementing the plan and create a tool to communicate that progress. Certain personnel are responsible for implementing activities to work towards achieving those goals. That was a piece that was really important to me as we had so many stakeholders in our community involved in this process, and too often we see school districts and organizations go through the strategic planning process, say we have a strategic plan, put it on a shelf and it collects dust. And we wanted to put together a tool that would hold myself and our fellow administrators accountable to make sure that we're ensuring the strategic plan that so many people volunteered so much time to create. We have leaders for each goal that are held accountable for those goals. Our academics and achievement is Dr. Megan Bagby. Our communication goal is myself. Facilities is myself. Our finance goal leader is Ms. Heather Smith. Our safety goal leader is myself. And then our technology goal leader is co-headed by Dr. Megan Bagby and Mr. Kyle Williams. Throughout this process, the strategic planning process, it was resounding feedback in all of our forums, whether it be our community-wide survey that we sent out as part of a strategic plan, or every one of our meetings that had to do with strategic planning, was that space was a concern, our aging facilities were at the forefront, and it urged the district to implement changes. At our August 5th, 2024 special board meeting, the board approved $112.8 million proposition to put forth to the taxpayers on our November 5th, 2024 election. How we got there, just a quick review. We first conducted listening sessions, we conducted a strategic plan survey, we created a strategic plan team. From that point, we went back out to the community and asked for volunteers who would like to be involved with what we called a facilities guidance team. We had about between 95 and 100 volunteers for our facilities guidance team. We generally had somewhere between 40 and 60 attendees at each one of those community engagement sessions. During those sessions, our team looked at all of the various scenarios that we had come up with as a group and narrowed those options down to 4 different scenarios that they would like to see the configurations for our buildings and locations. We sent out a community-wide survey with a postcard to all of our registered voters to vote, so to speak, and fill out our survey. At the end of the first survey, it was inconclusive, but it did really narrow it down to 2 of the 4 options. And survey 2 that we sent out a couple of weeks later favored our current proposal. So this truly is a proposal that's on our ballot, is a community-driven plan. Our referendum question is, shall the Board of Education of Mahomet Seymour Community Unit School 3, Champaign and Piatt Counties, build and equip an elementary school building, build and equip a junior high school building to replace the existing Mahomet Seymour Junior High School, alter, repair, and equip the Lincoln Trail Elementary School, improve school sites, and issue bonds of said school district to the amount of $112,800,000 for the purpose of paying the costs thereof. What does this mean? It means that at Middletown Prairie, no physical changes, but we would remove 2nd grade from that building. Lincoln Trail will be altered, repaired, and equipped, and we will also remove 3rd grade from that building. We will build a new 2nd and 3rd grade building south of our current Middletown Prairie Elementary School. Obviously the name would be to be announced. At the junior high, a new junior high south of our current building would be built. That would demolish the current building. We also would move the soccer field to the high school facility, and a new 200-meter track at the junior high would be built for a practice track for our track team and PE, physical education courses, and cross country. At the high school, there would be no changes at this time, but 5 or 6 years down the road, we can utilize some bonding capabilities and issue $40 million worth of improvements with no tax increase to the taxpayer. Also, I wanted to refer you everybody, to our website. It's the Mahomet Seymour Referendum website, and it's msreferendum2024.org. On this website, we have an overview of the project. We've got to look at our enrollment over the years. The main thing that we get questions about is how is this going to affect my tax bill? And there's a tax information calculator here at the bottom. So if you just grab your tax bill, answer the questions that you go through, and then it will tell you the results and how that would affect you as an individual taxpayer. So I encourage people to utilize this website, the resource. There's a ton of information on there. I would also direct you to, there's a FAQ section on there. There's also an I have a question button. If you click on that and write out a question, that gets directly to me, and I do my best to answer those as soon as humanly possible. So really, in a nutshell, that's how we got to where we're at, and just that it was a community-driven process. The actual question and such, is we went through that. So if anybody has any questions about the project or the process, I'd be happy to answer those.
Why don't we start real quick? Can you go back and give us that website? Because I like that property tax thing. That's, I know there's been a lot of questions about what the actual effect is going to be on our homes. So
it's the msreferendum2024.org. But the easiest way to get there is if you just go to our website, Mahomet Seymour. You can see right here, there's a November 2024 referendum tab that will take you directly to it as well.
Okay. All right, what questions might that have elicited from our audience? Yes, sir, please.
My name is Jim Risley. I've been a past teacher here and coach. I don't know if this falls in the parameters of what we can discuss or what you just discussed, but it would help me with my decision. I would like to know, because of the non-passing of the first two referendums, we had to have an action to that. And that action in the junior high was to add mobile classrooms. Is it okay to talk about the cost of those mobile classrooms? And as far as leasing them, I'm assuming that's what we're doing. Leasing them, and how much it costs to put them there? Is there any added costs? And what's the end game when we either get more or we don't have any?
Sure. Yeah. So I can start with partly answering the question and then hand off to Dr. Lee. Great job, by the way. So we knew the first referendum in 2022 was at the very end of my time as superintendent, and we knew that whether that passed or not, we were going to need portables at the high school, because even if that referendum had passed, we were out of space. So as it turns out, that referendum and then a referendum in November of 2022 also failed. So those portable classrooms, one of them was brought in the summer of 2022. A second one has now been added. Each portable has 2 classrooms in it. We are leasing them, and yes, there is a cost to those. I think that's a great question. I think it comes up just in terms of those are not free, and so our taxpayers are supporting those as well. So for specifics on that, I'll hand it off.
Sure. So one thing that I found surprising was the site work. You know, that you just don't bring those in and plop them down. You've got to pour concrete piers, you've got to move dirt around. The site work on the first one was right at $65,000, and the second one was $64,000 and change. So just getting that land ready is certainly expensive with that. The lease payment on our first one at 24 months is $1,000 and change a month. So at the end of the 24 months, you're looking at about $26,000 in lease payment. On the second one then, it's $1,938 a month. And we find that, I mean, there's just, unless things have changed since the last time we shopped around, I mean, you really have to get ahead of that and make sure that people know in the fall, and then you've got to get them up here as well. So the length of that one is 36 months, so that comes out to just under $70,000. So you're looking at $100,000 over just the 2 lease payments, and $130,000 in the site work on those two. We have to fence those, and you know, we have a secure entrance out there as well. So fencing costs at the first one getting it set up was just under $15,000, and then the additional portable, when we brought in the fencing on that, was right around $8,600. So cost of our first portable without technology involved, because we've got to have technology out there, we're a one-to-one school district, is $105,000. And then the cost of the second one without the tech cost is $142,000. And I mean, they're mobile homes essentially, so you know that they aren't extremely efficient. You know that they cost more than a normal building that size would cost to heat and cool as well.
Follow-up question. Is there a corridor that connects those to the junior high, or is it just open space?
No, it's open space, and on a day like this, it's fantastic, right? It's a little bit of a respite, and you're out, but no, it is fenced off, but it is the elements are there. So you know, if it's sub-zero and there are no restrooms in them, so they are coming in and out, and so if it's raining, you know, it's just part of it. So.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question. There's the fence, but is that back door still locked into the junior high?
Yes, so the back door is locked into the junior high. When a student leaves there to go use the restroom or something like that, they have a fob, and that fob is programmed that it's only active during the school day with regard to that piece of it. Yes.
Okay, so if the fob doesn't make it back
Right.
to the classroom, they can't make it in.
Right, so I'm assuming there's a couple fobs in each classroom, but I'm not certain on that.
Other questions? I have some questions that were presented through the community that couldn't be here tonight. The total question is, you know, how did we get here? The growth has been happening for many years. You touched on a few of those things. The real question, I think, in the totality of this question was, how has the district been planning for this? The growth did not sneak up on us. How have we been planning? I know we've had some referendums in the past. That's probably part of the solution.
Sure, so I have the perspective of having worked here from 1994 to 2005, and then I worked in other parts of the state for a while and came back as superintendent in 2017. And so the growth of the enrollment in Mahomet Seymour has been steady and consistent. It has grown faster in the last couple of years. Could be a lot of different reasons for that. But the way that we've prepared for it, if we look at from a historical perspective, the junior high was added on to in the early 1990s, around 93 to 94, 10 classrooms and another gymnasium and some remodeling. Lincoln Trail was added on to in the late 1990s with what we call, the fourth grade wing. The high school was also added on to somewhere in that time frame, and I can't remember the exact year, but the field house and also some other classrooms. And so that held us for a while. And then we got into the early 2010s and started to realize, and I was not here, so I'm just recalling the history of the conversations that were going on between the superintendent at the time, which was Keith Oates, then Rick Johnston, and the conversations that were going on with the board there, because they led into my time as being superintendent here as well. But started to realize that we were going to need more space, and so the decision was, I think, around 2010 to purchase the land that Middletown Prairie now sits on out here. And Middletown Prairie was built initially with just pre-K and kindergarten in it. And that was because the old Middletown building was 100 years old. I guess the best way to characterize that building was disrepair. At that age, and with the amount that would have needed to be done to it, it was no longer usable, and it had served the community for 100 years. So the decision was made to move pre-K and kindergarten out to this new building with the vision of putting first and second grade out here as well, and closing and then hopefully selling Sangamon. So the district did that. It was sales tax funds that funded Middletown Prairie Elementary. The school district did not go to the taxpayers for a tax rate increase to build Middletown Prairie Elementary. So that's one of the nice things about sales tax, is that you can issue debt, you can use the sales tax purpose is for facilities related expenditures. We ended up selling Sangamon Elementary for $750,000, which is pretty much unheard of for an old school. Many, many times districts are burdened with old buildings that they have to keep up, and they really just become not an asset, but you know, kind of a money pit. But we were very, very fortunate. It's now been developed into a commercial enterprise with 16 businesses in it, and it should be noted that the old Sangamon Elementary is now on the tax rolls producing property taxes. So there have been steps along the way historically to deal with the space and issues and the enrollment growth that's been going on. So when I became superintendent in 2017, those conversations were ongoing, and we were starting to talk about the fact that our enrollment is still growing, and that the junior high and Lincoln Trail, but mostly the junior high, were becoming over capacity, overcrowded, and that has continued to happen. So unfortunately, some of these conversations were taken over by a higher priority, which was the COVID pandemic. And that was a hard time for obviously everybody, but in particular for schools, and to figure out what we were going to do, how we were going to educate kids, how, you know, just handling it. And I know everybody in the room experienced it. And I think had that not happened, we might be in a different place right now. But that was our reality, and that had to be dealt with. It was top priority, and just keeping kids and teachers and the community safe, and also continuing with education. And so kind of when we realized that there could be an end to the pandemic, and there was, thankfully, we started a community initiative called Bulldog Blueprint. Very similar to this process that Dr. Lee talked about was much more in depth, and involved a greater degree of strategic planning in all different areas of the school district. Bulldog Blueprint was focused solely on facilities, and so that was a community engagement process that was very valuable. We learned a lot. We got a lot of community feedback and input, and unfortunately that led not to a successful referendum in 2022, but that's kind of an overview and summary of where we find ourselves today. So I think it's fair to say, and there's a lot of evidence, that the district has been planning and has really tried to look at a lot of other funding sources besides going to our taxpayers and asking for a property tax rate increase. And the time has just come now where public schools in Illinois don't have this huge menu of options to fund new buildings. We don't have like 10 different things to choose from. There's really kind of only two, and one is the sales tax, and we're not currently in a position with our sales tax funding to fund $112 million worth of facilities. And the other way is to ask our taxpayers for help in terms of asking for a property tax increase.
Appropriate follow-up question here from another one of our citizens is, you brought up the Sangamon building, the Sangamon school. It says, in hindsight, should the district have held on to the Sangamon school? We hear that we're renting rooms or something. That may be false information, but that maybe we're paying back into Sangamon by using it. In hindsight, should we have held on to Sangamon, and would that have helped this problem?
Well, I'll start. You can take some of that too. I would say no. I think the district made the right decision for a couple of reasons. Sangamon is kind of divided into two different parts. There's an older part, which is the part that extends to the south, and then there's the newer part, which is out on Main Street. And the older part was built in the early 1950s, and it was going to need quite a bit of work. The newer part was built in the around 1987 or so. And well, that's a logical question. You know, we had a school. Why did we sell it? I get that, but we also have to look at some other factors. One of which was the money that we would have put into Sangamon. Number two, it was full, and so we could have built Middletown Prairie Elementary. But at the time, Sangamon was getting more full. And the third problem that was really concerning was just the traffic flow and the safety issues of having an elementary school out on Route 47 As our community grows and gets busier, you have more and more cars interfacing in that area, more and more children in that area. Those are some of the reasons we looked at not keeping it and having the opportunity to sell it and build this facility, which was a vision for the future with this land and with what we could do out here on the east end of Mahomet for the future and for future growth.
Dr. Lee, anything to add there?
Well, first of all, to clarify, we do rent rooms, a room or two from Sangamon. That's where our technology department is housed. We simply don't have room for them. So that is true. I want to be very transparent on that we do so. It's an affordable place for our technology department to work. You know, Dr. Hall mentioned earlier that they did sell Sangamon for $750,000. Being as a superintendent for 15 years, in my first few years of being a superintendent, I sold a similar sized elementary building that was a little bit smaller, and the bidding war stopped at about, I think, $36,000. So certainly it wasn't in Mahomet, Illinois, so that's apples and oranges. But for the most part, when you see elementary schools being sold, they're not getting $2 and $3 million price tags that some people think. So the other piece of that is, and Dr. Hall answered that certainly eloquently, is that that was sold. And it was sold in what, 2017. So, you know, certainly we can continue to talk about that, but I'm one to self-reflect and then move on and try to solve the problem at hand, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we're here today in 2024.
You bet.
Back to our audience.
I'll get two, right? In your presentation, there wasn't any discussion of the transportation and the grounds building, bus barn.
Sure.
So potentially, how does that fit into the future? Staying there, moving, how does that look?
Sure. Well, I mean, they both need to be somewhere else, in our opinion, right? But it was loud and clear through our facility guidance team meetings that our stakeholders wanted money spent on classrooms and additional classrooms. They didn't want a lot of athletic facilities, which that's why we've kept this just a moving a soccer field that we have to because we're building a junior high on top of it, and then moving a track. And they weren't interested in a transportation facility or building and grounds at this time. So that is not in this proposal. This proposal focuses almost primarily on getting additional classroom space for our students. And we, in my office, we will work together and figure out what we need to do to house transportation and building and grounds, whether that be sales tax, O&M, we'll figure that problem out. But we want to focus right now on increasing our classroom space for our students and our staff.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I wrote down my question so I wouldn't get confused, but I've seen a lot of discussion online discussing the village and the school district in particular need to limit the growth of the community. Does the district have a way to do anything like that? And has the district had any conversations with the village about limiting the growth of the community?
Sure. The short answer is no. We don't control our growth, but certainly we have a great working relationship with the village. I meet with our mayor and village administrator on a monthly basis. We have joint meetings with the Board of Trustees and our Board of Education quarterly with agendas that are set out for the year. And people want to come to Mahomet for the school district. So that is a great thing. I'm not saying that we should just, you know, not check residency and things like that when people want to come in, because we do that and we verify that they live within our community. But certainly, if people want to live here, they're going to find a way to live here, in my opinion.
I just want to mention this one thing that in terms of the village of Mahomet versus the size of the school district. So if you think of the village of Mahomet as the donut hole, the school district is the donut around the village of Mahomet. And so there's growth obviously occurring in the village of Mahomet. We see subdivisions expanding, we see homes being built. If the village were to say, hey, we're not gonna have any of that growth in the village of Mahomet, there's a whole lot of area that's still within the Mahomet Seymour School District where my prediction would be growth would still occur. We have some areas in southwest Champaign. The Jacobs Landing subdivision is right next to Abbey Fields, but Jacobs Landing is in the Mahomet Seymour School District. Seymour is in the Mahomet Seymour School District. People build houses in rural areas to enjoy the countryside and the beautiful area that we live. So while we do see growth in Mahomet, and that is contributing to our enrollment increase, because as Dr. Lee said, and I think that many of us know, the schools are the attraction here. People want to move here for the schools. If we just shut it down in the village of Mahomet, it's not going to stop the growth because people want to come here. And I just also want to say this, that we have some challenges here. Obviously, growing enrollment presents some challenges, but the opposite situation is far, far worse for a community and for a school district to have dropping enrollment. So I think it's helpful just to think about what we really want and what we're asking for if we say stop growth, because that's also, in my opinion, not a particularly healthy way to proceed ahead. We also see lots of commercial growth, which is wonderful. That helps offset the burden on private residential taxpayers.
Can I piggyback on her comments too about growth? You know, this isn't the first position that I've had as superintendent, much like Dr. Hall came here after serving somewhere else. And when I mentioned that I sold a building prior, that was because we were losing enrollment. And I can tell you that when you're losing enrollment, from personal experience, it's easier to be a superintendent because it's easier to balance a budget, because you're reducing staff members, you're consolidating things. But the part that's very difficult is that you're taking programs away from kids because you don't have enough enrollment to staff those. And then when you look at all of the opportunities over just the time since Dr. Hall got here that we've given our students as a result of growth, we've really increased the amount of opportunities our kids have had too. So, you know, growth isn't a bad thing.
And a follow-up question, if the growth continues, how long will this plan solve our problem?
Great question.
So, depending on how fast it continues, right? So, you know, if you look at those projections on that is 20 years, Damien, is that what we've worked through? Approximately 20 years, but certainly any new building that we would build would be set up to where then they can be expanded. And I've been a principal in Normal where, you know, it's a wide double broom closets and things like that where your custodians put all their supplies and those are set up to be turned into additional wings and such.
Two things on that. One, Dr. Hall, completely unfair to use a donut analogy without bringing samples. Just want to point that out.
I'll remember that.
First. I know there's been confusion between the school board and the village, so I'd like to ask this kind of a follow-up question with you because I think this may lead into what we'll announce here at the end on October 24th. This comes from a resident who couldn't be here tonight. How will the referendum affect future property taxes since all these new businesses are opening up? This is where I think, I'm not sure this is a board question, it might be more a village, but maybe you can shed some light there.
Me? Okay. Well, so there's a lot there. Let me try to unpack it and feel free to. Well, I'll say this, that the more commercial development that a community has helps to offset the property tax burden on individual homeowners. And so, you know, this is why the ballot question has a dollar amount in it instead of a tax rate increase amount, because it's very hard to predict the exact amount of the tax rate increase, if that makes sense, because that changes every year as our EAV changes and grows. So the district bases the tax levy off of the EAV information, and as more commercial entities come into our community and the EAV grows, those commercial entities start to pay more of their, they pay their share of property taxes, and the burden gets spread around a little bit more. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view answer, other than to say that it is a good thing that we have commercial development, because it will help individual homeowners and offset some of their property tax burden. So take it away.
And so the other piece of that, we hear feedback that, well, all of the development out here is in a TIF, right? And one thing that I think we need to be cognizant of is actually in our last joint meeting with our village and the Board of Education, we brought a pro-TIF attorney in that was with the village, and then we also brought a school attorney that just wasn't anti-TIF, but just wanted to talk about the concerns that a school district should have when looking at if they're going to protest a TIF or not if it were to come into town. And this gentleman works for Franzik out of the Chicago suburbs and has been doing TIF work for a number of years, and he said that, quite frankly, our TIF agreement is one of the better ones that he's seen. So we get 50% of all of the commercial money that goes into the TIF on that, and then 100% of the residential. The other thing I think we need to keep in mind when we look at those TIFs is when that TIF was renewed. When was that, and how long was that for?
It was renewed for 11 years, and I believe it was 2021.
Okay, so that TIF's in place until 2031, but you've seen that once somebody starts out here, it sure seems like there's a lot going on. And I think that will continue to go on, and then when that TIF rolls off, we'll bear the fruits of that as well.
I know there's been a lot of, I'll come right to you. I'll come right to you. I know there's been a lot of confusion and questions about village budget expenses and spending, and why not on these kind of things in the Board of Education. So I just want to point out, on October 24th, we'll be here again at the library. We'll have Dr. Lee and hopefully Dr. Hall with us as well. But in addition, we'll have our village president, Sean Widener, with us as well to help understand, hopefully, some questions that might come from confusion or questions from village budgets and Board of Education budgets and expenditures. Thank you for your patience.
So when you're talking tax rates, you say commercial comes in, because I get the question a lot about tax rate. Commercial comes in and it can lower the tax rate. But from my understanding, a school district cannot raise a tax rate without referendum money. Can they raise it without a referendum?
Yes. Referenda are needed. A referendum is needed by law in Illinois to construct a new school building, unless you use a mechanism called debt certificates, which is how Middletown Perry Elementary was built. So that law is specific to building a new building, and that's why a school district has to go to its taxpayers. The school district can, I'm speaking generally here, but a school district can raise property taxes through the levy. But there are caps on each fund, and many school districts, and you can speak to the specifics of the funds here because I can't remember, but when you bump up against those caps, you can't go any further, and I think we do have some funds that we're pretty close to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because my understanding was the levy increased, like educational funds, you could levy for that, but couldn't necessarily levy to increase the bond tax rate.
So we have what are called restricted and unrestricted funds. So like our education fund is restricted. So we can only go up to a certain amount on that, and we can't go past it unless, the rate that we're asking for, unless you would pass an additional referendum. An unrestricted fund, for instance, would be like your Social Security. You levy for your Social Security what you need, and then you go from there. But we try to, based on what we think the EAV is going to do, we really try to be conservative with all of those in order to keep our tax rate steady, which we have for quite some time.
Okay, but can you levy for the bond construction.
No, so with, if we issue,
That's what I was
right,
trying to
no,
get to is, can you
the
raise-
the county tells us what we're going to levy for your bond and interest payment.
And you can't change.
No,
that.
not without referendum and
That's
issuing
where I
bonds,
was
yes,
trying to get.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
But it could go down if commercial.
Absolutely, the more your
Tax
EAV
rate.
goes up, the better the opportunity you have to decrease
Okay.
the tax rate, yes.
Thank you.
It seems like an
Not
important
that
distinction
big.
about, Dr. Hyde mentioned this, the dollar values, but at the referendum, not a percentage.
Yes.
I had a question. You, Mr. Risley mentioned the portables. Are there other? I know there's other factors to that building. Divided classrooms. I think there's 6 or so. They're split. Are there ways that community members can see that when they visit the campus and kind of experience it? Because it's pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely. If any of our community members want to go through any of our buildings, our principals and myself are available to conduct tours.
Yes, ma'am.
So, can you elaborate a little bit more on how Mahomet confirms residency? I think sometimes people think that maybe we just let anybody and everybody in. So, like for example, if a student's using like a grandparent's address but they don't actually live there, like how does Mahomet make sure that that
Sure.
doesn't happen?
So, I'd love to take credit for utilizing the Clear software, but we were utilizing it in a former position that I served in because we were a very attractive high school district that had a couple of other high school districts around it that the parents, it was just real popular to go there. So we have a software package that we run every one of our people who register go through. We do a run twice a year, generally in May and then again in July, and we utilize their database, and it bounces off of credit reports, cell phone bills, tax bills. There's a myriad of different data points that it looks at, and then it throws up a report that tells us the likelihood and gives a score to each one of our residents, and or non-residents, right? So based upon those scores, then our principals get together and make sure that 3 principals aren't calling the same family because we don't want it to look like we're harassing them. And then we just continue to get verified paperwork. We've got board policy states that you have to have so many documents from this category and a document from this category in order to prove residency. So if something has happened because somebody registered in 3rd grade, well, we run that again in 4th, and if they've moved, hopefully that will come up on there. If we have a really sticky situation to where something still doesn't seem right, the district does have a retired special agent, for lack of a better term, who serves as our residency specialist, and I believe 4 or 5 times we've had to have him investigate as well. So we do take that serious, and then certainly when we have reports that someone doesn't live in our district, because people also not self-report, but will report others, we certainly investigate that as well.
I just want to mention too, and I don't know if this is happening to you, but when I was superintendent, I got calls regularly from people who just wanted to pay our tuition rate to come here. So live out of district, but just, there's a set rate for tuition, and districts do not, some districts take that. When you're out of space, you don't do that, but you can't. And I think people, I would say, we don't have space for our residents, and that's the level people are willing to go to want to be here.
It doesn't behoove the district at all to allow out-of-district people to live here.
No,
Right.
not when you're growing.
Right. Great question.
Yeah, and as a follow-up, if you don't know the answer to this, that's really fine, but do you have like, off the top of your head, maybe a number of families or that you've kind of caught, so to speak, flagged? Thanks.
I do not, but I can tell you that the number of cases that I've gotten involved in just from 1 year to 1 year has decreased dramatically.
Thank you.
What else?
I have a lot of people asking, so how are we going to pay for teachers if we need more teachers as the enrollment increases, or let's say, for example, right now, we're living in max capacity for class sizes, and we move into the new building and we're not overcrowded, so maybe we have the funds to hire more teachers. Where does that money come from? And can you allude to what you shared last spring about how we have a lot of people who actually want to work in our district again, that you talked about at our board meeting, that you had more applicants than
Yes.
you interviewed?
So we've seen that bounce back some with regard to our applicant pools. We've had to do some actual screening, which there for a short period of time we didn't have the luxury of doing. Certainly, we still have some hard to fill positions.
Yes, I was talking about
yes,
regular ed.
but by and large, with some of our positions, we did see an uptick in applicants. The bond issuance and what we pay our teacher salaries come from a completely different bucket. So that all comes out of our education fund. I believe 78% of our education fund goes to salary and benefits. We also have what we have seen the last few years is an increase in state funding through our evidence-based funding, and we will continue to do that. People, I think, also need to keep in mind that if we build a second and third grade building, we're still going to have a lot of existing staff that are going to move in those buildings. But if we are able to lower class sizes, we would pay we pay those salaries through the education fund, which is completely different.
And we have the money for that.
Yes.
Speaking of the second and third grade building, sorry, I
Has she
been
done her
asked
two yet?
I've been asked a lot of questions today.
Sure.
And a big one seems to be a confusion that they think the decision was made to move second grade out of Middletown strictly because we are way overcrowded there. During the planning process, it was discussed moving third grade out, and can you explain why it's silly to have one grade level in a building? I know from a parent aspect, lots of parents said, I don't like it because my kids have to transition 2 years in a row. But on the educational side, the impact it would have and the benefit of having two classes in two grade levels in a building. And go ahead.
May I add to what Jill just asked, but I think it's a related question about why we wouldn't just put a larger addition on Middletown in order to keep the administrative costs minimized and things of that nature.
So, a couple of things I'll try to answer them both. One is, Middletown's huge, as it is. It is. If you walk a full lap around there, you will see how large it is. So, I don't know that best practice would be to add on to it again, and then you need to look at what that offers as far as your base of your cafeteria and gymnasium space and things like that, of what you may have to add on if you were going to add another wing to that. I don't know how feasible that would be. I don't know that we would want elementary school of over 1,000 kids. I don't know that I've ever seen one, to be honest with you. So that is why that is there. As far as having a building with just one grade level, I would be concerned with not only the transition being too much. Quite frankly, just 2 grade levels is a lot of transition, right? But it's how we're set up with our attendance centers here. The other piece of that is that the professional development, when you look at, in my opinion, the professional development as far as when you want to do your vertical alignments and things like that, at least you have someone else there. And then the third piece of that for me would be my concern would be with the cost of having a building with just one grade level in it, because you still have to clean it, you still have to serve lunch and things like that. I mean, you could get creative and look at satellites with lunches and things like that, but I just don't think that quite makes a lot of sense to me as well.
If you added on to Middletown Prairie, you would need you would need more personnel in that building anyway. So if it's a worry about people, you would have to add that. And I want to address also that when Middletown Prairie was built, there was discussion about, oh, we can add on to this building. Well, that was before there's 800 kids in it. And it is one of the I think it's one of the largest elementaries in the whole state. Lincoln Trail is too.
Absolutely, and to speak to your administrative costs, certainly, if the bond referendum passes and we've got more buildings, but we've got the same amount of kids, we'll have the same amount of administrative staff in my mind. So that's certainly our thought going into that. We have added administrative staff at Lincoln Trail and Middletown Prairie due to our enrollment. So I think that we would just take a look at that internally and take care of that.
So it's feasible that you have 3 administrators at Lincoln Trail and 3 at Middletown Prairie. You could end up with 2, 2, and 2.
I see
At
that as
3
definitely,
schools.
I see that as being feasible,
Because
yes.
administrative is based on enrollment, administrators.
That's how our evidence-based funding model is based on enrollments, and they have guidelines that they like to see you at, so we would certainly take a look at that as well.
We mentioned the 2 past referendums that have failed, and we're on our 3rd, and we talked about the cost has gone up in each one of those. As someone who is also, understanding much like our audience of what costs do in construction, the question has come in, is there a way to do this one piece at a time? I think the important part of this question is to reduce costs. So all the things that we want to get done, is there a way to do it piecemeal instead of one big chunk of $100 and something million that would help reduce the cost?
Well, in my mind, no, because certainly you look at the difference between the summer of 2022 referendum that had more work in it for $15 million less. Also, just this week I met with one of our local construction contractors, and he said that absolutely everything by and large is up 30%, and talks about your issues with supply chain and things like that. I'm not a construction guy, but I would think that there are also doing 2 buildings at one time. Not only are you buying it cheaper, but then also solving the problem faster that has been here for a few years. But then also I would take a look at, I'm guessing economy is the scale of as far as mobilization costs and site work and all of that can be done all at one time. And then you're also not looking at your increase. I mean, labor costs are gonna go up every year no matter what as well.
Going back to capacity, can you help us maybe clear the air? There's been some confusion that as soon as we're done building, this passes and we're done building, that we're automatically over capacity at that point. There's some confusion about that versus whatever time frame, 20, 40 years down the line, we may have to relook at all of this. Can you help us understand that, or are we good? I guess let me ask you this way. When everything's built, if everything passes, will we be at or near max capacity right off the bat and still be in the same situation we're in today?
No, we will not be. So not only do we have an opportunity to where we can add on to that, but then you also have the opportunity to where you're looking at adjusting your class sizes as well. So we can reduce class sizes and still be in a building. It's not gonna be 15 empty classrooms by any means, because we don't want that. But you can do all of that by adjusting your class sizes.
Do you have a guesstimation, might be the right word, on what if the referendum passes and we build everything, when we might have to be looking at another referendum? Is this a 20-year solution, 40-year solution?
Well, all of our talks have been that it's a 20-year solution, but certainly anytime you look at an enrollment after 5 years, is that what they say that
Yeah.
right? It's trying to predict out anything that's going to happen after 5 years is interesting. I will tell you this: when I came here in the fall of 22, the projected enrollment has been between 1.7 and like 2% each year of what when you look on the look back as well as moving forward. we saw about a 6.5% increase in the fall of 22. That was right after COVID. I think that there was a lot of homeschooling. Then we saw that dial right back in to right at 2% last fall. This fall on August 15th was right around 3%, but we've seen that number decrease since August 15th to yesterday as well. So, you know, you look at trying to really gauge that, traditionally it has been somewhere between 1.7 and 2% and change.
So you're saying based on the models, based on the consultants, all the work that your group's done, this referendum, if it passes and we get these buildings built, we're gonna be in a much better, sub-maximal capacity level for some time.
Yes.
All right, seeing no more questions, we'll start wrap up. There is one question before I get a couple wrap up questions here. I thought this was a pretty enlightening question here. What are the plans for the next 3 to 5 years if we can't pass a referendum to build new buildings? How are we gonna manage growth, and what is that going to cost if this referendum does not pass through?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we would have to look at portable buildings. And you've seen what those costs are, and I don't know what they are now because we didn't have to lease one and do site work this last year. But I think that you would see Mr. Mills at the junior high request another portable, and I also think that you would see Mrs. Hunter request at least one portable. So, you know, in my mind, that would reduce our playground space at Lincoln Trail, which already isn't big enough because of our enrollment at Lincoln Trail. And then I think that you would see, we'd have to get pretty creative at the junior high. I also think we'd probably have to really have a long conversation about how we're gonna get additional utilities out there, because I'm assuming that we're maxing out the utilities with 4 classrooms out there. And then you'd see an increase in class sizes because as we continue to grow, we can hire more teachers, we just don't have anywhere to put them. So that's certainly a concern with that as well. You would see more teachers on what we call carts. So they're traveling throughout the day because we don't have, so you know, your specials and things like that, generally, they like to be in their own classroom. I mean, it's hard to teach an encore class. Can you imagine our STEAM teacher at Lincoln Trail that has all kinds of hands-on projects trying to do something like that on a cart because we have to use that. So that just makes life more difficult. And our staff has been resilient over the years and flexible. And so I'm not saying that they wouldn't do it, but it's not what's best for kids at all. So
It sounds like a bunch of Band-Aids and not any real healing. That's what
Right.
It sounds like.
Yes. So in a nutshell, we would see increased class sizes. We'd see additional strain on our teachers, which in this day and age, retention is something that we really pay attention to. And then you'd see additional leases of portable classrooms. Am I missing anything there that you can think of?
No, that's a great summary.
Last call for questions from our audience. Dr. Lee, Dr. Hall, if people want more information, maybe you have our website still up here, more information than they maybe got here tonight, or if they have additional questions, where should they go for that information and questions?
They can go to that website and click on the I have a question. They can email me. My email address and contact information is on the website. They can call, they can come in and set an appointment with me. Happy to meet with anybody. And then as well as somebody mentioned a tour earlier, we're happy to give tours as well. Anything that anybody wants to do to help themselves be a more informed voter, I will go out of my way to help them become that.
Appreciate your openness for that. Dr. Lee, Dr. Hall, last question here as our sign off here, if you will. What's the most important thing that you think voters need to know as they consider their vote for this referendum this year? Get one, the most important thing, no pressure at all.
I mean, the well-being of our children in this community.
Anything to add, Dr. Lee?
No, I agree. I mean, it's certainly much past needed.
Dr. Lee, Dr. Hall, thank you so much for being here. It's never easy to be live and in front of people to ask questions. Sometimes it's a little easier to think about those answers, and so to put you on the spot, that's very brave and very much shows the leadership that we have here in Mahomet, in our schools, and formally in our schools, but you're still here, so we love that. So thank you for your time and energy tonight. Thank you. Thanks you, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, for being here tonight in person, and for those watching on the pre-recorded video, just want to remind everybody we will be doing another session October 24th. I'm assuming we'll be around the same time, 6:30 to 8. Pay attention to the Mahomet Public Library social media. We'll have all the information there, and we'll be joined by our village president, Sean Widener, at that one as well, which may be able to give us some more insight to everything that's going on here. So thank you again for being here, everybody. Appreciate you, and have a great night, and be safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.